Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Spectre here. Welcome back for another edition of Midnight Rider. Good to have you aboard. If you're joining on the YouTube side, Twitch side, D-Live side, or Tiger Network, good to have you all aboard across all platforms. Tonight on the broadcast, got a couple things. Not a real heavy night, but wanted to hit some of the highlights of the day as per what the Anons have been digging on, just kind of round robin that. And I got one major article on that I want to try and cover that's kind of a dot connector. Whitney Webb over at Unlimited Hangout had a piece out the other day. It's worthy of covering. Hopefully ties together a number of things here. And we'll also tie together a lot of articles that I've pulled out of the tune of about 150 or so pertaining to the SolarWinds hack net, dating back to December here. So stick around. We'll see you back here momentarily. Warning. These social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a piece by. Alright, welcome back. Like I said, tonight a little bit of a different modus operandi, I guess. Tonight I'm going to cover a couple things in regards to what the Anons have been digging on here today. Probably the big thing that's been going on is this whole GameStop business. I'm going to touch upon that here briefly and some of the goings on since I talked about that on the broadcast earlier today if you were with us. So let me just get that up here. Let's see, here we go. Let's try and do that. There we go. So over on the boards, what are they digging on? Well, Paul Joseph Watson on GameStop, highlighting the fact that all this business is going on with a short squeeze in that. Apparently there's a group of folks called Wall Street Bets out there that's got a Reddit page, and I guess it's a bunch of I don't even know what best way to describe these folks. Obviously not of the hedge funder type, let's put it that way. Just individual investors, I guess, and that to come together, whether they're on Robinhood type platforms or what have you, going through brokerage houses, whatever. But apparently they put the squeeze on some of these hedge funders, trying to get them to cover their shorts. And apparently they've run the price of GameStop and AMC theaters and a number of these up, way, way up. And so it's caused quite the stir in the stock market here since Friday when this began with Citron. And last word that we saw here later this afternoon, we found out that the crackdown began. Discord banned the subreddit Wall Street Bets. And then I'm not sure if I'm reading this right, but also it appears that Reddit must have banned the actual board. So I'm not sure if they had both a board on Reddit and then a page on Discord as well. Either way, it looks like they stood the thing back up and are probably going to be off and running anyway. So tomorrow looks to be quite an interesting day to follow all this stuff. Clock talk, let's see, not sure what's going on there. Non-summary, no salutes. Melania Trump setting up post-White House office in Florida, down at old Mar-a-Lago. Pennsylvania data, 200,000 more ballots cast than people who voted. And I think I have plenty of articles in that regard dating back to December timeframe. There we see Wall Street bets new, Autos unite. So apparently they're in it to win it. We'll see what happens. To insults of U.S. troops, Biden administration adds forcing female soldiers to shower with men. Gee, what could possibly go wrong there? I mean, who knew that our military was just one big giant social experiment? Ridiculous. CP Roundup, social media influencer charged with election interference stemming from voter disinformation campaign. It was a meme, FFS. And so, yes, the timing of this is rather interesting. Going back to the 2016 election, supposedly. Not sure what is going on there and or why, but nonetheless, something that smells afoot in this regard. I think there must be some dirty shenanigans getting ready to play out here. We'll have to stay tuned. That being said, scrolling back a little bit to a previous bookmark this, the office of Donald J. Trump, Troller in Chief. Biden's first big bill. This will destroy America as you know it. Awesome. As if 37 or 38 executive orders weren't enough. You know, pen and a phone, just like old 44 is mentor. But hey, I digress. Newly declassified McCabe documents just released. I'll probably have to look for that and dig into that here shortly. President Trump declassifies Crossfire hurricane documents on eve of Biden inauguration. I think I was talking about Paul Sperry had already started digging in on that over at Real Clear Investigations. Appoint a special counsel to investigate evidence of Biden corruption. Yeah, and we'll see how far that goes. Trump formally declassifies Russia documents over objections of FBI. Yeah, I think that's already been done. Trump orders to declassify a binder of documents related to the FBI's Russia probe. POTUS EO's memorandum on declassification of certain materials related to the FBI's Crossfire hurricane investigation. Current archive of Donald J. Trump's White House. Apparently that is being backed up. Trump's 1776 Commission, National Unity for America's Founding Values. And of course, if you've listened right here, you'll know that we went through the 1776 report. Have that archived, and you can also find the PDF over on my Patreon site. Let's see. Marjorie Taylor Greene files articles of impeachment on Biden. And just as she promised she would, yep, that's out there. Official petition to recall Governor Newsom. Hollywood insider dishes on pedophilia. Ooh, very, very interesting. So it looks like the plot thickens with old Newsom, who has put a stranglehold on the folks out in California. So very, very interesting. Just some of the stuff that the Anons are digging on here this evening. All right, so here's the crux of what I wanted to cover tonight. It's a little bit of a read here. Before I get into this, the another mega group spy scandal, sabotage, and the SolarWinds hack. Before I get into that, I'm just going to read through some of the headlines that I have collected since probably about December 13th, 14th timeframe when this broke. U.S. Cybersecurity Agency issues emergency directive over SolarWinds hack. That was out of Epoch Times back on the 14th of December. Dominion Voting Systems CEO says company has never used SolarWinds Orion platform. That's still out of Epoch Times. Let's see. Breaking exclusive. Owners of SolarWinds have links to Obama, the Clintons, China, Hong Kong, and the U.S. election process out of Gateway Pundit back on the 15th. Let's see. Breaking report. SolarWinds HQ raided in Austin. More news coming on CEO and Executive Vice President. That was out of SGT report. Let's see. Hackers at center of sprawling spy campaign turned SolarWinds dominance against it out of OANN. Let's see. Still scrolling forward. Bombshell. SolarWinds owners have links to Obama. Okay, we got that one out of News Punch. Let's see. Newsweek alleged Russian SolarWinds hack. Probably an 11 on scale of 1 to 10. Cybersecurity experts warn. Mind you, consider the source. That was Newsweek. And to this day, they still continue to pin it on Russia. Matter of fact, if you heard anything about Biden's first phone call to Putin, that was one of the things in that was quote unquote discussed. Nonetheless, Code Monkey, is this how the U.S. Treasury got hacked? The timing matches. Additional dig on SolarWinds, Orion, that out of Centipede Nation. Can go on and on here, but the latest that I had, probably up to around the 8th of January, federal court system sealed records likely breached by SolarWinds hack. So this thing was pretty far-reaching. Oh, and Microsoft says SolarWinds hackers were able to view its source code. That was out of Sputnik back on the 31st of December. So this thing apparently had a lot of reach. Not just throughout the government, but specifically big tech and a number of other outfits as well. So keep that in mind. And of course, like I said, this article is going to connect some dots here, so pay close attention. And I'll circle back. Oh, sorry about that. Didn't mean to use a Jen Psaki term here. Apparently, they're making fun of her for using that term. We'll come back around to that at the end here and some of the other goings on out there as well. So, again, another mega group spy scandal, some menage, sabotage, and the SolarWinds hack. And if you know anything about Whitney Webb, she does an excellent job of researching, putting all of her sources net in there. Over the last couple of years, she has done some fantastic digs on Epstein, the Maxwells, the Bronfmans, and whatnot. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know that they're going to be mentioned in this article as well. So, again, pay close attention. The devastating hack on SolarWinds was quickly pinned on Russia by U.S. intelligence, and a more likely culprit, Samanage, a company whose software was integrated into SolarWinds software just as the backdoor was inserted, is deeply tied to Israeli intelligence and intelligence-linked families such as the Maxwells. Haven't we heard a little bit about old Ghislaine trying to weasel out of her case here as of late? I wonder why. Let's see. So this was published on the Last American Vagabond. It says, in mid-December of 2020, a massive hack compromised the networks of numerous U.S. federal agencies, major corporations, the top 5 accounting firms in the country, and the military, among others. Despite most U.S. media attention now focusing on election-related chaos, the fallout from the hack continues to make headlines day after day. The hack, which affected Texas-based software provider SolarWinds, was blamed on Russia on January 5th by the U.S. government, Cyber Unified Coordination Group. Their statement asserted that the attackers were likely Russian in origin, but they failed to provide evidence to back up that claim. And of course, going through my archives here, probably one of the first guys to make mention of that was who? None other than Da Nang Dick. So, surprise, surprise. Russia, always. Boogeyman. Since then, numerous developments in the official investigation have been reported, but no actual evidence pointing to Russia has yet to be released. Rather, mainstream media outlets began reporting the intelligence community's likely conclusion as fact right away, with the New York Times subsequently reporting that U.S. investigators were examining a product used by SolarWinds that was sold by a Czech Republic-based company as a possible entry point for the Russian hackers. Interest in that company, however, comes from the fact that the attackers most likely had access to the system of a contractor or subsidiary of SolarWinds. This, combined with the evidence-free report from U.S. intelligence on likely Russian involvement, is said to be the reason investigators are focusing on the Czech company, though any of SolarWinds' contractors/subsidiaries could have been the entry point. Such narratives clearly echo those that become prominent in the wake of the 2016 election, when now debunked claims were made that Russian hackers were responsible for leaked emails published by WikiLeaks. Parallels are obvious when one considers that SolarWinds quickly brought on the discredited firm CrowdStrike to aid them in securing their networks and investigating the hack. CrowdStrike had also been brought on by the DNC after the 2016 WikiLeaks publication, and subsequently it was central in developing the false declarations regarding the involvement of Russian hackers in that event. There are other parallels as well. As Russiagate played out, it became apparent that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and a foreign power. But the nation was Israel, not Russia. Indeed, many of the reports that came out of Russiagate revealed collusion with Israel. Yet those instances received little coverage and generated little media outrage. This has led some to suggest that Russiagate may have been a cover for what was, in fact, Israelgate. Very, very interesting. And of course, we'll never hear that in the media. Why? Well, who do you think owns the media companies at the end of the day? Nonetheless, similarly, in the case of the SolarWinds hack, there is the odd case and timing of SolarWinds' acquisition of a company called Semenage in 2019. As this report will explore, Semenage's deep ties to Israeli intelligence venture capitalist firms connected to both intelligence and Isabel Maxwell, as well as Semenage's integration with the Orion software at the time of the backdoors insertion, warrant investigation every bit as much as SolarWinds' check-based contractor. But again, folks, what are we going to hear out of the media? Well, it's always Russia. So, Orion's fall. In the months since the hack, evidence has emerged detailing the extent of the damage, with the Justice Department quietly announcing, the same day as the Capitol riots, January 6, that their email system had been breached in the hack, a major incident according to the department. This terminology means that the attack is likely to result in demonstrable harm to the national security interests, foreign relations, or the economy of the United States, or to the public confidence, civil liberties, or public health and safety of the American people, per NextGov. The Justice Department was the fourth U.S. government agency to publicly acknowledge a breach in connection to the hack, with the others being the Department of Commerce and Energy and the Treasury. Yet, while only 4 agencies have publicly acknowledged fallout from the hack, SolarWinds software is also used by the Department of Defense, the State Department, NASA, the NSA, and the Executive Office. Given that the Cyber Unified Coordination Group stated that fewer than 10 U.S. government agencies had been affected, it's likely that some of these agencies were compromised, and some press reports have asserted that the State Department and the Pentagon were affected. And I guess I'll also pause there and highlight the fact, if she doesn't later in the article, that guess what? Some of the state governments, like Michigan, also use this software that also happen to use variants of the software as well. I don't recall if Michigan had Orion or not, but I can't remember if they had a variant of that, or perhaps maybe it was Arizona. One of those two had that as well, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know it was connected to, guess what? Oh, just some voting machines. But hey. In addition to government agencies, SolarWinds Orion software was in use by the top 10 U.S. telecommunications corporations, the top 5 U.S. accounting firms, New York Power Authority, and numerous U.S. government contractors such as Booz Allen Hamilton, General Dynamics, and the Federal Reserve. Other notable SolarWinds clients include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Microsoft, Credit Suisse, and several mainstream news outlets, including The Economist and the New York Times. Based on what is officially known so far, the hackers appeared to have been highly sophisticated, with FireEye, the cybersecurity company that first discovered the implanted code used to conduct the hack, stating that the hackers routinely removed their tools, including the back doors, once legitimate remote access was achieved, implying a high degree of technical sophistication and attention to operational security. In addition, top security experts have noted that the hack was very, very carefully orchestrated, leading to a consensus that the hack was state-sponsored. And again, I guess I'll pause right there. If she doesn't highlight this, I believe that FireEye had actually caught this as far back as May of last year, and ultimately didn't get discovered, the breach and so forth, until middle of December. Why it took that long, who knows? FireEye stated that they first identified the compromise of SolarWinds after the version of the Orion software they were using contained a backdoor that was used to gain access to its Red Team suite of hacking tools. Not long after the disclosure of the SolarWinds hack on December 31st, the hackers were able to partially access Microsoft's source code, raising concerns that the act was preparation for future and equally devastating attacks. FireEye's account can be taken with a grain of salt, however, as the CIA is one of FireEye's clients, and FireEye was launched with funding from the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel. It is also worth being skeptical of the free tool FireEye has made available in the hack's aftermath for spotting and keeping suspected Russians out of systems. And of course, red flag right there, In-Q-Tel. We know quite a bit about that old outfit, don't we? In addition, Microsoft mother key source is the SolarWinds. Another key source in the SolarWinds story is a military contractor with close ties to Israel's intelligence apparatus, especially Unit 8200, and the reports of events also deserve scrutiny. Notably, it was Unit 8200 alumnus and executive at Israeli cybersecurity firm Cycode, Ronen Slavin, who told Reuters in a widely quoted article that he was worried by the possibility that the SolarWinds hackers were poring over Microsoft source code as prelude to a much more ambitious offensive. To me, the biggest question is, was this recon for the next big operation? Slavin stated. Also odd about the actors involved in the response to the hack is the decision to bring on not only the discredited firm CrowdStrike, but also the new consultancy firm of Chris Krebs and Alex Stamos, former Chief Information Security Officer of Facebook and Yahoo, to investigate the hack. Chris Krebs is the former head of the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA for short, and was previously a top Microsoft executive. Krebs was fired by Donald Trump after repeatedly and publicly challenging Trump on the issue of election fraud in the 2020 election. And I believe it was he who said it was the most secure election ever, right? As head of CISA, Krebs gave access to networks of critical infrastructure throughout the U.S., with a focus on the healthcare industry, to the CTI League, a suspicious outfit of anonymous volunteers working for free and led by a former Unit 8200 officer. We have brought in the expertise of Chris Krebs and Alex Stamos to assist in this review and provide best-in-class guidance on our journey to evolve into an industry-leading secure software development company, a SolarWinds spokesperson said in an email cited by Reuters. It is also worth noting that the SolarWinds hack did benefit a few actors aside from the attackers themselves. For instance, Israeli cybersecurity firms Check Point and CyberArk, which have close ties to Israeli intelligence Unit 8200, have seen their stocks soar in the week since the SolarWinds compromise was announced. Notably, in 2017, CyberArk was the company that discovered one of the main tactics used in an attack, a form of SAML, token manipulation called Golden SAML. CyberArk does not specify how they discovered this method of attack and, at the time they announced the tactic's existence, released a free tool to identify systems vulnerable to Golden SAML manipulation. In addition, the other main mode of attack, a backdoor program nicknamed Sunburst, was found by Kaspersky's researchers to be similar to a piece of malware called Kazuar that was also first discovered by another Unit 8200 link company, Palo Alto Networks, also in 2017. The similarities only suggest that those who developed the Sunburst backdoor may have been inspired by Kazuar, and they may have common members between them or a shared software developer building their malware. Kaspersky stressed that Sunburst and Kazuar are not likely to be one and the same. It is worth noting, as an aside, that Unit 8200 is known to have previously hacked Kaspersky and attempted to insert a backdoor into their products, per Kaspersky employees. CrowdStrike claimed that this finding confirmed the attribution, at least to Russian intelligence, only because an allegedly Russian hacking group is believed to have used Kazuar before. No technical evidence linking Russia to the SolarWinds hacking has yet been presented. So now we get to sabotage and sabotage. The implanted code used to execute the hack was directly injected into the source code of SolarWinds Orion. Then, the modified and bugged version of the software was compiled, signed, and delivered through the existing software patch release management system, per reports. This has led U.S. investigators and observers to conclude that the perpetrators had direct access to SolarWinds code, as they had a high degree of familiarity with the software. While the way the attackers gained access to Orion's code base has yet to be determined, one possibility being pursued by investigators is that the attackers were working with employees of a SolarWinds contractor or subsidiary. U.S. investigators have been focusing on offices of SolarWinds that are based abroad, suggesting that, in addition to the above, the attackers were likely working for SolarWinds or were given access by someone working for the company. That investigation has focused on offices in Eastern Europe, allegedly because Russian intelligence operatives are deeply rooted in those countries. It is worth pointing out, however, that Israeli intelligence is similarly deep-rooted in Eastern European states, both before and after the fall of the Soviet Union. Ties well illustrated by Israeli super spy and media tycoon Robert Maxwell's frequent and close associations with Eastern European and Russian intelligence agencies, as well as the leaders of many of those countries. Israeli intelligence operatives like Maxwell also had cozy ties with Russian organized crime. For instance, Maxwell enabled the access of the Russian organized crime network headed by Semyon Mogilevich and into the U.S. financial system, and was also Mogilevich's business partner. In addition, the cross-pollination between Israeli and Russian organized crime networks which also share ties to the respective intelligence agencies, and such links should be considered if the cyber criminals do prove to be Russian in origin, as U.S. intelligence has claimed. Though some contractors and subsidiaries of SolarWinds are now being investigated, one that has yet to be investigated, but should be, is Samanage. Samanage, acquired by SolarWinds in 2019, not only gained automatic access to Orion, just as the malicious code was first inserted, but it has deep ties to Israeli intelligence and a web of venture capital firms associated with numerous Israeli espionage scandals that have targeted the U.S. government. Israel is deemed by the NSA to be one of the top spy threats facing U.S. government agencies, and Israel's list of espionage scandals in the U.S. is arguably the longest and includes the Jonathan Pollard and Promise software scandals of the 1980s to the Larry Franklin AIPAC espionage scandal in 2009. Larry Franklin, where have we heard that here recently? Isn't that what Pam's been reading about? In any case, though much reporting has since been done on the recent compromise of SolarWinds Orion software, little attention has been paid to Samanage. Samanage offers what it describes as an IT service desk solution. It was acquired by SolarWinds to Samanage's products could be added to SolarWinds' IT operations management portfolio. Though U.S. reporting and SolarWinds press releases state that Samanage is based in Cary, North Carolina, implying that it is an American company, Samanage is actually an Israeli firm. It was founded in 2007 by Doron Gordon, who previously worked for several years at Mamram, the Israeli Military Central Computing Unit. Samanage was SolarWinds' first acquisition of an Israeli company, and at the time, Israeli media reported that SolarWinds was expected to set up its first development center in Israel. It appears, however, that SolarWinds, rather than setting up a new center, merely began using Samanaj's Research and Development Center, located in Netanya, Israel. Yeah, there we go. Several months after the acquisition was announced, in November 2019, Samanaj renamed SolarWinds Service Desk became listed as a standard feature of SolarWinds Orion software, whereas the integration of Samanaj and Orion had previously been optional since the acquisition's announcement in April of that year. Now, this means that complete integration was likely made standard in either October or November. It has since been reported that the perpetrators of the recent hack gained access to the networks of U.S. federal agencies and major corporations at around the same time. Samanaj's automatic integration into Orion was a major modification made to the now compromised software during that period. Samanaj appears to have had access to Orion following the announcement of the acquisition in April 2019. Integration first began with Orion version 2019.4, the earliest version believed to contain the malicious code that enabled the hack. In addition, the integrated Samanaj component of Orion was responsible for ensuring the appropriate teams are quickly notified when critical events or performance issues with Orion are detected, which was meant to allow service agents to react faster and resolve issues before employees are impacted. In other words, the Samanaj component that was integrated into Orion at the same time the compromise took place was also responsible for Orion's alert system for critical events or performance issues. The code that was inserted into Orion by hackers in late 2019, nevertheless, went undetected by this Samanaj-made component for over a year, giving the hackers access to millions of devices critical to both U.S. government and corporate networks. Furthermore, it is this Samanaj-produced component of the affected Orion software that advises end users to exempt the software from antivirus scans and group policy object restrictions by providing a warning that Orion may not work properly unless those exemptions are granted. Well, isn't that convenient? Yeah, we can't have any sort of antivirus stuff looking for that now, can we? Continuing on, Samanaj, Salesforce, and the World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum. What do we got going on this week? Just so happens we're not meeting in Davos, but having their virtual Davos meeting, right? All right, so around the time of Samanaj's acquisition by SolarWinds, it was reported that one of Samanaj's top hackers was the company Salesforce, with Salesforce being both a major investor in Samanaj as well as a partner of the company. Salesforce is run by Mark Benioff, a billionaire who got his start at the tech giant Oracle. Oracle was originally created as a CIA spin-off and has deep ties to Israel's government and the outgoing Trump administration. Salesforce also has a large presence in Israel, with much of its global research and development based there. Salesforce also recently partnered with the Unit 8200-linked Israeli firm Diagnostic Robotics to predictively diagnose COVID-19 cases using artificial intelligence. Aside from leading Salesforce, Benioff is a member of the Vatican's Council for Inclusive Capitalism, alongside Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, a close associate of Jeffrey Epstein and the Clintons, and members of the Lauder family who have deep ties to the mega group and Israeli politics. Benioff is also a prominent member of the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum and the inaugural chair of the WEF's Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, C4IR, making him one of the most critical players in the unfolding of the WEF-backed Great Reset. Other WEF leaders, including the organization's founder Klaus Schwab, have openly discussed how massive cyber attacks such as befell SolarWinds will soon result in even more significant economic and social implications than COVID-19. Last year, the World Economic Forum Center for Cybersecurity of which Salesforce is part, simulated a digital pandemic cyber attack in an exercise called Cyber Polygon. Oh, isn't that just dandy? Yet another case of them doing simulations that just so happened to pan out exactly as described. Cyber Polygon speakers in 2020 included former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of Russia Mikhail Mishustin, WEF founder Klaus Schwab, and IBM executive Wendy Whitmore, who previously held top posts at both CrowdStrike and a FireEye subsidiary. Notably, just months before the COVID-19 crisis, the WEF had held Event 201, which simulated a global coronavirus pandemic that crippled the world's economy. That's a pretty critical paragraph there, folks, if you're paying attention. Notice the pattern. They have to show us every time before they do something, and they put it under the guise of running these, what do they call them? Simulations. Yes, simulations. Kind of reminds me of what happened on 9/11, simulation that just magically went hot. Nonetheless, in addition to Samanaj's ties to WEF big shots such as Mark Benioff, the other main investors behind Samanaj's rise have ties to major Israeli espionage scandals, including the Jonathan Pollard affair and the Promise software scandal. There are also ties to one of the WEF's founding technological pioneers, Isabel Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell and sister of Ghislaine, who has long-standing ties to Israel's intelligence apparatus and the country's high-tech sector. So now we get to the good stuff in the Bronfmans, the Maxwells, and Viola Ventures. At the time of its acquisition by SolarWinds, Samanaj's top investor was Viola Ventures, a major Israeli venture capital firm. Viola's investment is Samanaj, until its acquisition was managed by Ronen Nur, who was also on Samanaj's board before it became part of SolarWinds. Prior to working at Viola, Ronen Nur was a vice president at Verint, formerly Converse Infosys. Verint, whose other alumni have gone on to found Israeli intelligence front companies such as Cybereason. Verint has a history of aggressively spying on U.S. government facilities, including the White House, and created the backdoors into all U.S. telecommunications systems and major tech companies, including Microsoft, Google, and Facebook, on behalf of the U.S.'s NSA. That's pretty troubling. In addition to his background at Verint, Ronen Nur is an Israeli spy, having served for 13 years in an elite IDF intelligence unit, and he remains a lieutenant colonel on reserve duty. His biography also notes that he worked for 2 years at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., which is fitting given his background in espionage and the major role that Israeli embassy has played in several major espionage scandals. As an aside, Nur has stated that thought leader Henry Kissinger is his favorite historical character. Notably, Kissinger was instrumental in allowing Robert Maxwell, Israeli super spy and father of Ghislaine and Isabel Maxwell, to sell software with a backdoor for Israeli intelligence to U.S. national laboratories, where it was used to spy on the U.S. nuclear program. Kissinger had told Maxwell to connect with Senator John Tower in order to gain access to U.S. national laboratories, which directly enabled this action, part of the larger Promise software scandal. In addition, Viola's stake was managed through a firm known as Carmel Ventures, which is part of the Viola Group. At the time, Carmel Ventures was advised by Isabel Maxwell, whose father had previously been directly involved in the operation of the front company used to sell bug software to U.S. national laboratories. As noted in a previous article at Unlimited Hangout, Isabel inherited her father's circle of Israeli government and intelligence contacts after his death, and has been instrumental in building the bridge between Israel's intelligence and military-linked high-tech sector to Silicon Valley. Bridge, huh? Or have we heard that term referenced many a time before? Isabel also has ties to the Viola Group itself through Jonathan Kolber, a general partner at Viola. Kolber previously co-founded and led the Bronfman family's private equity fund. Claridge, Israel, based in Israel, Kolber then led Coor Industries, which he had acquired alongside the Bronfmans via Claridge. Kolber is closely associated with Stephen Bronfman, the son of Charles Bronfman, who created Claridge and who co-founded the Mega Group with Leslie Wexner in the early 1990s. Kolber, like Isabel Maxwell, is a founding director of the Perez Center for Peace and Innovation. Maxwell, who used to chair the center's board, stepped down following the Epstein scandal, though it's not exactly clear when. Other directors of the center include Tamir Pardo, former head of Mossad. Kolber's area of expertise, like that of Isabel Maxwell, is structuring complex cross-border and cross-industry businesses and financial transactions. That is, arranging acquisitions and partnerships of Israeli firms by U.S. companies. Incidentally, this is also a major focus of the Perez Center. Other connections to Isabel Maxwell, aside from her espionage ties, are worth noting, given that she is a technology pioneer of the World Economic Forum. As previously mentioned, Salesforce, a major investor in Samanage, is deeply involved with the WEF and its Great Reset. The links of Israeli intelligence and Salesforce to Samanage, and thus to SolarWinds, is particularly relevant, given the WEF's prediction of a coming pandemic of cyber attacks and the early hints from former Unit 8200 officers that the SolarWinds hack is just the beginning. It is also worth mentioning that Israeli government considerable ties to the WEF over the years, particularly last year when it joined the Benioff-chaired C4IR and participated in the October 2020 WEF panel entitled The Great Reset, Harnessing the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Startup National Central, an organization aimed at integrating Israeli startups with U.S. firms, set up by Netanyahu's longtime economic advisor Eugene Kendall and American Zionist billionaire Paul Singer, have asserted that Israel will serve a key role globally in the Fourth Industrial Revolution following the implementation of the Great Reset. So a lot of groundwork being laid here, and of course, I talked about this the other night too. I do plan on putting together a show here specifically as to what all has transpired throughout this week. Currently gathering some articles in that regard, so stay tuned. So now we move on to Gemini, the Bird Foundation, and Jonathan Pollard. In addition to Viola, another of Samanage's leading investors is Gemini Israel Ventures. Gemini is one of Israel's oldest venture capital firms, dating back to the Israeli government's 1993 Yasma program. The first firm created by Yasma, Gemini, was put under the control of Ed Malavsky, who Israel's government had chosen specifically for this position. As previously reported by Unlimited Hangout, Malavsky was then serving as the executive director of the Israel-U.S. Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation, aka BIRD, where he was responsible for investments of $100 million in more than 300 joint projects between U.S. and Israeli high-tech companies. A few years before Gemini was created, while Malavsky still headed BIRD, the foundation became embroiled in one of the worst espionage scandals in U.S. history, the Jonathan Pollard affair. In the indictment of U.S. citizen Pollard for espionage on Israel's behalf, it was noted that Pollard delivered the documents he stole to agents of Israel at 2 locations, one of which was an apartment owned by Harold Katz, the then legal counsel of the BIRD Foundation, and an advisor to Israel's military, which oversaw Israel's scientific intelligence gathering agency. Gathering agency Leckham. U.S. officials told the New York Times at the time that they believed Katz had detailed knowledge about the Pollard spy ring and could implicate senior Israeli officials. Subsequent reporting by journalist Claudia Wright pointed the finger at the Milovsky Ron Bird Foundation as one of the ways Israeli intelligence funneled money to Pollard before his capture by U.S. authorities. One of the first companies Gemini invested in was ComTouch, now Siren, which was founded by ex-IDF officers and later by Isabel Maxwell. Under Maxwell's leadership, ComTouch developed close ties to Microsoft, partially due to Maxwell's relationship with its co-founder, Bill Gates. ComTouch and Siren. Siren, doesn't that also ring a bell with what was going on with the voting machines as well? Is that part of the system and the network and all that stuff that led over to Germany, or am I mistaken in my thought there? Maybe a different spelling, I can't remember. A coming hack of Microsoft? So, if the SolarWinds hack is as serious as has been reported, it's difficult to understand why a company like Semenage would not be looked into as part of a legitimate investigation into the attack. The timing of Semenage employees gaining access to the Orion software and the company's investors, including Israeli spies, and those with ties to past espionage scandals where Israel used backdoors to spy on the U.S., and beyond, raises obvious red flags. Yet, any meaningful investigation of the incident is unlikely to take place, especially given the considerable involvement of discredited firms like CrowdStrike, CIA fronts like FireEye, and a consultancy firm led by former Silicon Valley executives with their own government/intelligence ties. There is also the added fact that both of the main methods used in the attack were analogous or bore similarities to hacking tools that were both discovered by Unit 8200 linked companies in 2017. Unit 8200 founded cybersecurity firms are among the few winners from the SolarWinds hack, as their stocks have skyrocketed and demand for their services has increased globally. While some may argue that Unit 8200 alumni are not necessarily connected to the Israeli intelligence apparatus, numerous reports have pointed out the admitted fusion of Israeli military intelligence with Israel's high-tech sector and its tech-focused venture capital networks, with Israel military and intelligence officials themselves noting that the line between the private cybersecurity sector and Israel's intelligence apparatus is so blurred it's difficult to know where one begins and the other ends. There is also the Israeli government policy, formally launched in 2012, whereby Israel's intelligence and military intelligence agencies began outsourcing, quote, activities that were previously managed in-house with a focus on software and cyber technologies, end quote. Semenage certainly appears to be such a company, not only because it was founded by a former IDF officer in the military's Central Computing Unit, but because its main investors include spies on reserve duty and venture capital firms linked to the Pollard scandal, as well as the Bronfman and Maxwell families, both of whom have been tied to espionage and sexual blackmail scandals over the years. Yet, as the Epstein scandal has recently indicated, major espionage scandals involving Israel receive little coverage, and investigations into these events rarely lead anywhere. Promise was covered up largely thanks to Bill Barr during his first term as Attorney General, and even the Pollard affair has all but been swept under the rug with Donald Trump, allowing Pollard to move to Israel, and more recently, pardoning the Israeli spy who recruited Pollard during his final day as president. Also under Trump, there was the discovery of Stingray surveillance devices placed by Israel's government throughout Washington, D.C., including next to the White House, which were quickly memory-holed and, oddly, not investigated by authorities. Israel had previously wiretapped the White House's phone lines during the Clinton years. Another cover-up is likely in the case of SolarWinds, particularly if the entry point was, in fact, Semenage. Though a cover-up would certainly be more of the same, the SolarWinds case is different as major tech companies and cybersecurity firms with ties to U.S. and Israeli intelligence now insist that Microsoft is soon to be targeted in what would clearly be a much more devastating event than SolarWinds due to the ubiquity of Microsoft's products. On Tuesday, CIA-linked firm FireEye, which apparently has a leadership role in investigating the hack, claimed that the perpetrators are still gathering data from U.S. government agencies and that the hackers are moving into Microsoft 365 cloud applications from physical, on-premises servers, meaning that changes to fix Orion's vulnerabilities will not necessarily deny hacker access to previously compromised systems, as they allegedly maintain access to those systems via Microsoft Cloud applications. In addition to Microsoft's own claims that some of its source code was accessed by the hackers, this builds the narrative that Microsoft products are poised to be targeted in the next high-profile hack. Microsoft's cloud security infrastructure, set to be the next target of the SolarWinds hackers, was largely developed and later managed by Asaf Rappaport, a former Unit 8200 officer who is most recently the head of Microsoft's research and development and security teams at its massive Israel branch. Rappaport left Microsoft right before the COVID-19 crisis began last year to found a new cybersecurity company called Wiz. Microsoft, like some of Samanja's main backers, is part of the World Economic Forum and is an enthusiastic supporter of and participant in the Great Reset agenda. So much so that Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella wrote the foreword to Klaus Schwab's book, Shaping the Fourth Industrial Revolution. With the World Economic Forum simulating a cyber pandemic, and both the World Economic Forum and Israel's head of Israel's National Cyber Directorate warning of an imminent cyber winter, SolarWinds does indeed appear to be just the beginning, though perhaps a scripted one to create the foundation for something much more severe. A cyber attack on Microsoft products globally would certainly upend most of the global economy and likely have economic effects more severe than the COVID-19 crisis, just as the World Economic Forum has been warning. Yet, if such a hack does occur, it will inevitably serve the aims of the Great Reset to reset and then rebuild electronic infrastructure. Oof. That's a bit of a read right there. Lots to chew on. A lot of different connections all the way through the Maxwells, the Bronfmans, Gates to, everybody throw in the kitchen sink in that one, right? So, again, think of what is playing out right now. What are we learning about Epstein, his connections with Leo Black here as of late? The article come out today, Zero Hedge, asking whether or not the rabbit hole goes much deeper. Oh yeah, it certainly does. And I would venture to say it's probably going to delve right into a lot of the same financials net that Whitney has already uncovered and laid back to the very same organizations net in Israel, would be my guess. So again, this thing runs fairly deep. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of other information comes out here in the next several days and weeks ahead. Everything, in my opinion, is being made manifest. Everything that was in darkness is now coming to the light, and we're going to do our best here to put that out there for you guys as long as we're still standing on these platforms. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Alright, well, that is going to do it for this edition of Midnight Rider. Appreciate you guys tuning in this evening, and we'll see you back here shortly on the next one. Take care and God bless everybody.